This is The Competitive Edge with Nir Eyal. Welcome to The Competitive Edge. My name is Scott Britton, and I'm here to help you answer a question that we all have. How can I get an edge in my business and life? Each week, we're going to uncover how some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs, entertainers, and thought leaders get an edge so you too can reach your full potential. Do you want more unique ideas and tactics like the ones we're about to share in this episode? Then you're going to want to do two things. The first is to subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes so that you don't miss out on new ideas from future conversations. After this, you're going to want to go check out my main site, lifelonglearner.com. When you enter in your email address to join the Lifelong Learner community, you'll get access to my most advanced strategies to stack the deck in your favor. Again, that's life-longlearner.com. Have you ever wondered why you check email 20 times a day or apps like Instagram constantly? I sure as heck have. It's like there's this little urge I can't control that every time I'm not doing something, I feel the need to satisfy. Well, it turns out that there is a method to many of these successful companies' madness when it comes to designing highly addictive products. And today, I brought on one of the foremost experts on designing habit-forming products and technology, Nir Eyal. After successfully starting his own tech companies and helping many others with product design, Nir's compiled all of the wealth of research and experience into a distilled framework and new book called Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products. In this episode, we'll dive into the Hooked framework and unveil why certain products are so addictive. We'll cover each component of building a product that you'll need to understand, as well as common things many startups miss in this habit-forming product equation. Whether you're wondering why you have an urge to check Facebook 10 times a day like me, or thinking about designing the next Instagram, you'll learn a lot in this episode. Let's hear from Nir Eyal. Nir, what's going on, man?
Hey, great to talk to you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I'm just excited because, I've been trying to figure out why I've been checking Instagram 20 times a day since I downloaded it. And you're just an expert on designing habit-forming products and technology. And there's just so much to unpack here, man. So I'm just pumped to have you on the show.
Thanks. Well, I can tell you all about your Instagram habit because it's one of the companies I profile in my book. And I've been spending a lot of time looking at companies like Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and WhatsApp and Snapchat and all these companies that somehow bring us back time and time again. That's fascinated me for the past 2 years now.
Excellent. We all want to know why we're addicted. So how did you really get into codifying these behaviors and habit formations that are so prevalent in everybody's lives who's using technology?
Yeah, so my story kind of began about 3.5 years ago. I was running a company in the gaming and advertising space, and this was back when Facebook had just opened up their platform. Everybody was building an app in their basement, and what I found was in the industry, in the gaming industry, a lot of people were using these techniques, these psychological persuasion techniques, but they didn't really have a terminology for why these things worked. They just know they did work. And I was surprised to find as well that in the advertising business, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's really built around mind control, right? Influencing people to do things. And I found similar traits that there was all this psychology being used, but nobody really knew what these things were called and how to use them in the most effective manner possible. And then I also found on the other side, after my company was acquired and I moved on, I started doing a bunch of academic research to try and figure out, why these things worked. And I found that a lot of the academics weren't actually really applying the psychology to business applications. I went to Stanford Graduate School of Business, and we really didn't have all that much in the realm of how to use the psychology of user behavior to design better products. And so I really wrote this book. A part of my journey started, I read a book by Charles Duhigg called The Power of Habit, which is a fantastic book, great read. Charles is an amazing writer, where he summarizes a lot of the research from the academic research around habits. But I was I was left wanting more. I wanted to know how I could use the psychology of habits to build better products. And I didn't really find a book or resource out there to help me do that. And so I spent about the next 2 years researching the academic literature as well as practitioners in the field to figure out how you can use the psychology of behavior design to build user habits, to build better products.
I love it, man, because I feel like what we all want to do is like build things that improve the world. But it having really like a blueprint that allows us to do that of proven ideas and tactics, which you put together. It's an amazing resource that's going to change the way people use technology. Maybe we could just dive into the hooked framework that you came up with and talk about in your book.
Sure. Yeah. So the hook model has four basic steps, four phases, if you will. It starts off with a trigger. A trigger is something that cues the next action, and we have external triggers, which are things in our environment that tell us what to do next. Then we also have what's called an internal trigger, and these are things that inform the user with what to do next, but the information is not in the trigger. It's actually informed through an association in the user's mind. So think of an emotion, a routine, a situation. These things don't tell us explicitly what to do, and yet we're triggered from them to automatically do specific behaviors. So for example, you're feeling lonely, you instantly hop onto Facebook. You're unsure about something, and before you scan your brain to see if you actually know the answer, before you know it, you're typing in a query onto Google. You're feeling bored, and instantly you're checking YouTube or stock prices or sports scores or the news. So we have these associations with mostly emotions that trigger us to action. And these are the things that form our long-term habits and behaviors. So that's kind of a very quick summary of the trigger phase.
Real quick, I have a question for you. So is it imperative for somebody building and designing a product, or even if they just have an idea, to understand what that emotional internal trigger is before they build a product?
Well, so the first thing that you have to understand is that you don't need a habit to have a successful company. There's lots of businesses that can do just fine without a habit. You can bring people back to your business through advertising or through search engine optimization or heck through physical storefronts, right? All of these
Sure.
things bring users to your business. However, if you're building the kind of company that requires what I call unprompted user engagement, users using the product without really consciously thinking about it, kind of like how we check Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all these companies couldn't survive, right? Their business models wouldn't be viable if they didn't have habits. Then you have to have a hook. You have to use these four steps. And therefore, to answer your question, you have to understand your user's internal trigger. If you don't understand the itch, it's going to be impossible to scratch it.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what happens after the trigger. We've understood the trigger, and maybe we could talk about what just a quick example of what an external trigger is. So let's say I'm
Sure.
bored, and you know what? I'm going to pop onto my Instagram. What would be the external trigger for that?
So the external trigger for using Instagram might be a notification from one of your friends that they've posted a photo. Or it could be the app icon itself. You open your phone. I don't know if this ever happened to you. It happens to me all the time. I open my phone to check the time, and I see all these external triggers,
Oh
right? I see
yeah.
these app notifications. And before I know it, I'm tapping away at email or checking Instagram or Twitter. And of course, I have no idea what time it is. So,
Yeah, half the time I
so
open my phone, I don't actually do what I intended to do.
exactly. So that you're not alone there. I think that happens a lot because these triggers are so. So anytime you see that little jewel icon that tells you, "Hey, there's something waiting for you here," there's an implicit information for what to do next. Right? Open the app. So that's an example of an external trigger.
Makes total sense. So what happened? What do we need to think about after somebody opens our app and we've established the trigger?
So what comes next after the trigger is the action phase. The action phase is the simplest behavior done in anticipation of a reward. So something as simple as scrolling on Pinterest or searching on Google or pressing the play button on YouTube. These very, very simple things that we do in anticipation of getting a reward. And reward is the third step of the hook. Rewards are these things that feel good, that give the user what they came for. They scratch the itch, but leave the user wanting more. And so one thing that's been in a lot of psychology research around habits is that as long as it feels good, it's enough. And I actually contend that that's not enough. That what we find in a lot of habit forming products is not just a reward, but a variable reward.
Mm.
And this comes out of the research, the classic research of B.F. Skinner that you might remember from your Psych 101 class in college. He was the father of operant conditioning. And what he discovered was that when rewards are given on a variable basis, so when you're not exactly sure what you're going to get, when there's a bit of mystery, a bit of intrigue, an intermittent reward, that's when we become most engaged. That's when we become most captivated by the experiences. So in all sorts of technologies, you find these variable rewards, whether it's scrolling through your newsfeed or playing an online game. There's always this element of variability, and I describe in the book the different shapes and forms and how we as product makers can utilize those different variable rewards.
So an example might be if I'm scrolling through I'm scrolling through Twitter rather. I wanted to say Tinder because I'm curious to get your opinion on that app because I feel like amongst the people in their 20s generation, it's just grown faster than like anything I've ever seen. But for
Hello?
Twitter, like an example would be I'm scrolling through my feed and I'm looking for that one good article and I don't know when it's going to come, but it might come sooner or might come later, but I know something's going to be that I'm going to read.
Right, right. So Twitter is a great example. Tinder is also a great example. There's this variability about what you might find next. So in Twitter, it's about this information reward of, the one good tweet that if you just keep scrolling and scrolling, you're going to find, right, that one entertaining tweet. And Facebook uses a similar dynamic. And of course, on Tinder, it's a great example, right? That beautiful, simple action done in anticipation of reward of flicking left or right, right? There's always this variable reward about who the next person's going to be, how attractive are they going to be, how close by are they going to be, right? There's all this variability about what you might find next. And so you keep doing that key action.
Makes total sense. Okay, so somebody takes the action. What's the next thing we need to be thinking about?
Right. So we've got the trigger, we've got the action, we've got the reward, and finally comes the investment. And the investment is part of a feedback loop that we don't see outside of products, but I think it's absolutely critical. And a lot of people, a lot of companies forget about the investment phase. The investment phase is where the user puts something of value into the product for a future benefit, some kind of future reward. It's not about immediate gratification, it's about a future benefit. So investing in a product by putting content into it. So for example, the more I invest by putting music into my iTunes library, the better it becomes. It becomes better and better the more I use the product. Or the more data I give to a personal finance software like mint.com or on Pinterest, the more I like things, the more data I'm giving to the company, and therefore the product is becoming better and better with use. Same thing with followers or my reputation score. All of these things are examples of what I call stored value that make the product better with use. The other thing that investments do is that they load the next trigger. So these are all little things that you're doing inside a product. And every time you do those things, you're actually making it more likely for you to return back to use the product in the future. So let's say WhatsApp, for example.
Yep.
You send someone a message on WhatsApp. There's no immediate gratification, right? You don't get any immediate reward. There's no points and badges or leaderboard. What you're doing is investing in that platform in anticipation of a future benefit that someone will write you back. And of course, when you get written back, you get this little notification, which is an example of an external trigger. And that brings you through the hook another time.
Yeah, I mean the most present example with me right now is just all the different things, all the different services out there where I can get like karma points. So like for example, like Reddit, it's my account has 400 upvoted points or whatever it is, and
Right.
I'm not going to go to some new platform because I've already gotten 400 points in this one that's working pretty well for me.
Great example. Great example. You've stored your reputation as a form of stored value that now it's kind of difficult to leave, right? Maybe there is a better product out there, but you wouldn't really know because you've kind of formed this habit of based on all the work you've put into this product. And that's really the killer aspect of habit forming products. For better or worse, better products don't always win. And a lot of times that's not for good reason. It's just because of habits.
Interesting. Where do you see most startups failing in this framework that maybe if they were just to think a little bit more about one particular part of this framework, they could be more successful?
Right. Well, I think it starts first by understanding what's going on. I think that there's this myth that these successful companies happen by mistake, and that's not the case. That even if they don't understand how they're using these principles, they are in fact using consumer psychology to persuade our day-to-day behavior. And so, if you're the kind of company that is in need of forming user habits, the first thing to do is to realize that fact and realize that if you need to create unprompted engagement, if you need people to come back on their own, if that's a requirement for your business model, you have to have these 4 steps. If you don't have them, you're not going to build a habit forming product.
This is completely random, but maybe I feel like you're the best person to answer. So I left my first Yelp review uh, last week for
Okay.
this guy because he was really nice to me. I did like this hoverboarding thing here in San Diego where I live, and this guy was like, "Thanks so much." I'm like, "How can I help you, man? You've been so gracious and thoughtful." And he's like, "Leave me a Yelp review." And so I left him one. But I know there's people out there that are like just incessantly leaving reviews for everything, and I'm curious, is that part of the investment thing? Like, why do people leave Yelp reviews and TripAdvisor stuff and really get into this whole idea of like putting content that I can't really see the benefit of that they're getting besides just feeling good?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I want to know about hoverboard. That sounds like from Back to the Future.
It is amazing. So what happens is they connect this tube to a bottom of a jet ski,
Uh-huh.
and then it connects to this board where you basically strap in. It kind of looks like a skateboard, and you get into the water and you stand just like erectly tall. And what happens is the person starts driving the jet ski, and instead of the the stream coming out the back of the jet ski, it comes out the bottom of the platform that you're on, and you can basically fly. So I was flying like it was so cool, man. I was flying like 10 to 15 feet in the air on the spout of a jet ski, and there's nothing like it I've ever done. And I'm actually going and doing it today again. So because
That sounds amazing.
it is, you have to try. You have to try it. It's called flyboarding, actually.
Okay, I'm there. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, man.
But to answer your question about the Yelp reviews, I think you're absolutely right that is the investment phase. That when you're putting effort into a product, when you start rating restaurants that you go to, and you see a similar mechanic with the new Foursquare model, or one that I'm hooked to is Flickster. Right? It's very difficult for me now. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. If I watch a movie, I have to rate it. Like I can't help it because I've got this internal trigger of when I watch a movie, I've invested the previous phase that I've invested in movies I want to watch. When someone tells me about a great movie, I store it in Flickster. Then when I watch the movie, the internal trigger is this association with the movie itself. And then the action is to watch the movie itself. The reward is, did I like the movie? And the investment then becomes leaving a review. So it becomes this app has built their hook on top of an existing behavior, right? They've bolted on to this existing habit that we have around watching movies, and we watch movies for all sorts of internal triggers around boredom and seeking entertainment. So they've bolted this product in a similar way of how Yelp and the new Foursquare app does with restaurants, right? With experiences in our lives that after we experience these things, we feel this need to save, to collect. There's this kind of investment in the experience to make it real based on taking this rating action. And of course, that makes us more likely to do it in the future because I'm not going to watch a movie and not rate it. I have hundreds of movies now rated in
Right.
this
You're the
app.
official Flickster Rater of the year. Like
Right.
you can't lose that.
It's actually, there's not really a social reward. I talk about these 3 types of variable rewards of tribe, hunt, and self in the book, but there, I don't know if anybody actually sees my reviews, and I don't really care. But there's this kind of completion mechanic around rewards of the self, what I call rewards of the self, around mastery, consistency, competency. It's why we love playing video games, even if we're not playing them with other people, because we love getting to the next level, the next accomplishment, the next achievement. That feels really good. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it's variable, right? There's this uncertainty around that mechanic of, did you do it? Did you get to the next level? Did you get to the next accomplishment? And so that's what these products are leveraging.
Yeah, I mean, as you described that, the number one example which that I can think of, which you said kind of led you down this path, is all the games that are on Facebook and are on our phones, where it's
Right.
like I'm constantly collecting gold coins and badges and for just clicking. Like
Right, right, right.
So I'm so fascinated by this stuff, and I was reading a friend's blog post the other day about his company, and it was exactly what you said, like a company that required unprompted engagement. And he was talking about why the company failed. You might have heard of it. It's called Sonar. It was one of those like ambient networking devices or networking apps. And he was saying how, he focused on engagement so much, and he really wishes that he focused on growth instead of
Mm.
engagement. And I guess I'm curious because, obviously both things are important to be successful. But when as somebody who's designing a product, when can you feel like, all right, I have this habit thing on lock. Now it's time to grow, like to blow the doors off.
Right. Well, this is a really good and difficult question, and I don't think that there's a blanket answer. I think the answer is it depends. That I like to talk about companies in terms of what I call the GEM framework, GEM. So every company needs these three fundamental things. If you break down a business model, it really comes down to growth, engagement, and monetization. Right? That's GEM. So what I wrote this book about was solely that center factor, right? Engagement, all about engagement. And engagement is super important, but it's necessary but not sufficient, right? If you have 10 users who are using your product every single day, that's terrific. But if you can't figure out how to get from 10 to 10 million, for the, let's say you're in the ad business, for example, and you rely upon generating money from a large user base, if you can't grow and you can't monetize, well, then you've got diddly. So we need these three factors. We need growth, engagement, and monetization, or we don't have a way to create and deliver value to our customers. So engagement is really one piece. Now, when do you focus on each one of those? That becomes very contextually specific to the business you're working on. What I'm trying to preach here in Silicon Valley, where I live, and to the greater entrepreneurship community, is that for too long, I think we've just been focused on growth. That everybody wants their business to be viral, viral, viral. That's what everybody wants, and that's great. We have to have growth. That's terrific. But if we don't have engagement, if we just have growth, we have what's called a leaky bucket, right? And we've seen these come and go. There's these companies that as soon as a new viral platform opens up, and oh my gosh, everybody's going to use Facebook now to acquire new users, right? Just like Zynga did. And remember this company Vidi tried this, and they got really big really fast, but without engagement, well, the users leaked out, right? They didn't stick around. So we have to have all three. We have to have growth, engagement, and some kind of way to monetize.
How should we think about like fixing those leaks? So let's say we're growing, we're really excited, and all of a sudden we just see that there's just like not the retention numbers that we're looking for. What is your like go-to strategy for diagnosing that and fixing it?
Right. So I'm kind of the plumber for many of my clients. A lot of clients that work with me on a consulting basis will call me because, hey, the VCs invested and our growth curve looked tremendous and everything was going great. And then, a month, 2 months, 3 months out, people aren't sticking around. And so that's really why I created the hook model. That's really why I worked on this book, is because I think there's a very simple framework that I provide to help people assess why their product isn't creating a habit. And that's these four steps of the hook: a trigger, action, reward, and an investment. So my job is pretty simple, right? I put up these four steps and I ask people, can you fill this out? Can you tell me your hook of why people would go through these four steps to find, to form these habits in their lives?
Do you feel like a lot of times the company missed the mark on appealing to maybe the internal trigger emotion that would keep them coming back, or is it more like a design fallacy?
Well, I think without understanding that internal trigger, and every company is a little different, right? I can't say that there's that all companies miss one phase of the hook versus another. Sometimes I go to a company and they haven't figured out what their internal triggers are, and they don't really know what itch they're scratching for their user. Other companies, their action phase is way too complicated. They're asking the user to do too much. Other companies, their reward isn't all that fulfilling, right? It doesn't actually scratch the user's itch. And then with other companies, they're doing three of the four, but they're just not asking for an investment, and so there's nothing to pull the user back in. So it's pretty specific to the company, but every company has their own challenge when it comes to fulfilling one or more steps of this hook. And if they don't have this challenge, well then they don't need my help. They're doing great.
Nir, well, this is amazing, man. I mean, everybody who's listening out there who's interested in building products, who maybe has a product, they now have this framework to really just diagnose their company, to build products, and really just follow a proven formula that, as far as I'm concerned, given the examples that we've talked about and you've shown me in your book, makes so much sense, man. But I know that there's so much more awesome information about this in your book. So maybe we could just take a minute here and just tell everybody a little bit about the book, where they can find it, and where they can learn more about you, because I know you have an excellent blog as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, the book is called Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products, and it's available on Amazon, and the release date is November 4th, 2014. So just a little over a month away, it'll be available. You can also go to hookmodel.com, and if you get the book before the publication date, I'm actually offering this book bundle of 4 great resources that have to do with habits. There's 3 free ebooks, videos, all this stuff you get for free for pre-ordering the book. And then my blog is nirandfar.com, but Nir is spelled like my name, Nir, so Nir and far.com.
Awesome. Well, Nir, thank you so much, man. This has been highly valuable, and I'm excited to just continue reading your stuff, dude.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
Before we finish up with today's Mindshare, I just want to say thanks for listening to another episode of The Competitive Edge. If you enjoyed the ideas in this episode and want access to future conversations, the best thing you can do is subscribe to The Competitive Edge on iTunes. If you haven't done that already, right now is the best time to take care of that and get on board. And while you're there, if you feel like this show has made a positive impact on your day, it'd be great if you could leave us an iTunes review so that more people can find the show. Now, I know we covered a lot in this episode, and there might be a few key ideas or tools that you want to remember. So we went ahead and compiled all of the notes and links mentioned from this conversation for you on lifelonglearner.com. That's life-longlearner.com. Alrighty, let's go ahead and dive into today's Mindshare.
Hey guys, welcome to another Mindshare segment. This one is going to be a little bit different because it's not really related to this awesome episode we just did with Nir. See, the thing is, I keep having friends who are listening to this podcast, and I'm so grateful for you. Keep asking me, hey, I think I want to start a podcast. What do I need to do? What do I need to have? And I thought maybe real quick right now, I could just kind of break down like how I do these and show you that it's really actually not that challenging, and talk about what the biggest challenges are. So all of these interviews, all these things are just Skype calls. And I use this thing called Ecamm Call Recorder to record each call. So if you have Skype and $20 to download this plugin for Mac, or there's probably something very similar for PC, you can start a podcast. It's really that easy. So there's the actual call recorded conversation. I have a little mic on my computer right out that I plug into my computer. It is different than the one that comes stock on the computer, but you certainly can use that. You can just buy another one for higher audio quality. And really, the only other thing that you need, depending upon how much you want to edit it, if you want to have a little theme song like mine, is just hosting. So I use a hosting service called Libsyn, and after I record the file and export it, all I have to do is upload it. And when I upload it to the server, it gets sent to iTunes and Stitcher and all the other sources where I have the podcast. And that's pretty much it. So I think, there's a lot of people out there that are like really interested in this. They think it would be really cool to talk to all these people. And I have to tell you, it is amazing. It's an amazing way to connect with people, to build your network, to provide a ton of value to people listening, build thought leadership around things you care about. And what I say to all these people, like, if you have a mic, you have Skype, you have Ecamm Call Recorder, the only thing you got to do is start scheduling guests, and just really get going. And don't worry about having the perfect intro song and the perfect, little segue and an audio editor guy. And all these things are awesome. But a lot of times what I'll find is that we'll let not having all these things set up prevent us from getting started, instead of getting started and then going and needing these things by necessity, which is often a much stronger way to push us to actually go and get these things done and actually get the job done when it comes down to it. So, If you have any questions on this stuff, you can always email me, Scott at Lifelong Learner. But I just want to encourage you, like, if you want to start a podcast, you can totally do it. You can do it for less than $100. The hosting's $5 a month. And it's as simple as finding a couple friends who would commit to an interview with you and doing an interview over Skype. And it's really that easy. So if this is on your heart to do this, I highly recommend going and doing it. It's a much faster medium to building an audience than starting a blog. And in my opinion, for me, it's a lot more fun. So that's all I got today. Hope you've enjoyed this episode with Nir, and thanks as always for listening. I will see you next time.